All right. All right. Hey, everyone. How's it going? It has been a long time since I've last streamed. I think the last time was like mid-August or something. And I wasn't planning for it to take this long before I'd stream again, but it's sort of just happened. Hey, Pyro. How's it going? Yeah, so what happened was, I guess I'll give a little explanation. So not that much to say, except that I think last August I was about to basically have, just take a break for a family vacation. And then when I did that, I realized during my time off just how much I really needed it. I think I was just feeling kind of burnt, I was working hard and streaming quite often, twice a week. And I don't know, just everything kind of was, I guess, weighing in on me, and I just needed the break. And when I took those 2 weeks off, I just didn't feel like getting back on right away. And then, things kept going that way. And then, other things started happening, things in my personal life, other projects, and I just kept thinking, I'll get back to it. And then before you know it, 6 months have passed. So here we are. I'm pretty good, Pyro. So I could say one of the things that kind of kept me busy just before the holiday break, as you guys know, those who watch me, one of the tools that I like to use is Git extensions. So this is it's basically a GUI for Git, available on Windows. There's also 6 months, man. There's also versions available. I think that with Mono, it's something that can run on Linux and Mac. Although there's a new version, and this is if you've watched me use it before, this is like version 3 point something. And I think since 3 point something now, we don't. It doesn't really support Linux yet. So that's something that hopefully will come eventually. But anyway, the point is that I like this tool. It's something that I use at work. It's something that I, because of me, a lot of people are using as well. And one of the things that they added in the newer version is this left pane here, this left panel. It's pretty cool. Like, it shows you branches, remotes. If you have multiple remotes, you can also show tags if you have tags. And yes, exactly. So I think I'm gonna just call you Slurpee. So does it support submodules? So yes, you know exactly where I'm going with this. So yeah, it's pretty cool, but the one thing it doesn't have is submodules on the left panel. So it does have submodules up here. So there's this kind of like pull down menu where you can look at the submodules that you have in your currently open project. So here we can see I have under my third party folder, line noise and NOC. So these are two submodules, but I just thought, it would be really nice if it was actually on the left side. There's actually another GUI for Git that does that. It's a source tree from Atlassian. And I think there's a few others that do the same kind of thing where they present to you the submodules in a kind of hierarchical format. So I thought, I had contributed to Git extensions in the past. It's C#. So I thought, well, why don't I just try and see how hard it would be to add this feature. And the funny thing is that, I immediately started hacking on it, and it didn't take me very long to actually get something working, something basic working. But you know how it is, what is it? It takes like, 20% of the effort to get 80% of it done. But then, the last 20% takes 80% of the effort. So it was a bit of this kind of situation. So what happened was, I opened up an issue and even a pull request, just kind of started discussion, and it, kind of became a huge discussion. I guess I could, I won't even bother. Became a huge discussion on the Git extensions, GitHub tracker. Lots of the people had opinions on how they should work. I also realized that there were a lot of things I hadn't thought about in terms of the way it works asynchronously, and issues around making sure that it can update its status and stuff like that without you know, like locking up the program. So anyway, long story short, I kept working on it, and then while I was doing this, I was, you know, sort of paying attention to other issues on the Git extensions GitHub, and started contributing in other places. You know, the more I learned about the left panel, the more I was able to fix bugs there. So I started opening pull requests to fix bugs, started answering questions, and then before I knew it, like by Christmas time, the Git extensions team, which was a small core team, about, I think it's like 8 or 9 developers, asked if I would like to join the team. So I accepted, and so now I'm actually part of the core team on for Git extensions, which is pretty cool. And the funny part is that I've done a whole bunch of stuff. You know, there's a whole bunch of fixes. Yeah, thanks, Pyro. A whole bunch of fixes and, like, you know, features even. I've done other things in here, like actually can we see it here? Actually, this version doesn't show it because this is actually the last official version. But anyway, I did a whole bunch of work on the remote stuff here, a bunch of stuff. But the original feature, the submodules feature, has yet to be merged, but it's coming really soon. I finally did a whole bunch of work on it over the last couple of weeks. It's, you know, really, it's pending final review. I can even, you know, let me see, I have it right here. So this is the Git extensions code. Just to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going with this, because I think it's kind of interesting. And in fact, like, I've been thinking that, you know, rather than just working on Vectrexy during my streams, I might maybe split my time and work sometimes on Vectrexy and sometimes on Git extensions. Because this is, you know, personal project, personal time type of stuff. And I think I'm going to, like, not be able to do Git extensions and, you know, Vectrexy twice a week type of thing. You know, so it's, hold on a second. Okay, here we go. It's opening on my other screen. Okay, so this is Git extensions. It's running right now in release, yeah. And this is what I've added on the left side. This kind of submodules pane you see here. This section. Basically, what you see here is under submodules, you'll have the top module, which is, in this case, I have a clone called Git extensions 2, and then under there, under externals, there are 4 submodules here, and there's actually an immediate one directly immediately under Git extensions here, and you can also see that here when you pull down this menu. So this toolbar menu, like, pull down, is somewhat redundant now, but, you know, we're not going to remove it because some people actually prefer using this. It's just 2 ways to kind of access the same thing, although you kind of get more here because you can actually interact. Like here, you can't really do much. You can't right click. All you can do is select. Whereas from here, because it's, you know, it's a tree view, you've got like context menu stuff, so you can like update, manage, synchronize these. You can open or update specific submodules. If you double click on a submodule, it'll actually open that submodule. And you can see that it bolds the current module that you're on. It'll show like the status here. The status stuff is the same thing you'll see here. All that's being updated asynchronously. So one thing that was really interesting for me is, you know, so those of you who know me, who've been watching me, I'm mainly a C++ developer. That's what I've been doing for a long time. C# is just a, you know, something I did learn it when it came out, and I use it for tooling and stuff from time to time, but I've never considered myself a C# expert in any way. But this project has forced me to kind of up my C# game, if you will. So they're using, you know, like very latest, I think it's, what is it, C#7? Is that the latest C#? And the whole code base like underwent a big kind of refactoring effort before I joined, where they went in and they kind of applied AsyncAwait to the whole thing. So they tried to make it a much more responsive app with lots of, you know, async stuff going on. And so that was a really interesting thing because I had to learn all of that. I had not really done much. I mean, I did a little bit of async programming in video games, but not to the extent that is being done in this application. So that was really actually quite interesting. And actually, as AsyncAwait is pretty cool feature of C#. Hey, Moosey boy. Yeah, man, it's been a long time. 6 months. Like, I don't know the exact date. I guess I could check. Let me see here. Let me see my YouTube videos. I'm curious, actually, when was the very last time? Oh, yeah, and then there's that one thing that kind of sucked. The last time I streamed, so the last time was episode 95, and that was August the 10th. And unfortunately, for, you know, and I wrote about this on, I tweeted this. Unfortunately, YouTube rejected the video. All they wrote, so I can kind of show this here. So you see, like, episode 94, that was August 8th. Then the last time I streamed was August 10th. And they rejected it. And it says here, copyright claim, inappropriate content. And, you know, I don't know why. And the thing is that I read about this, and it's kind of weird. Normally, when you have inappropriate content, you get like you have this strike system in YouTube, and normally you get a strike, and then that's, you know, when you can repeal the strike, and, you know, and then some, I think a human will take a look at it or something. But the thing is, I didn't get any strike against me, so there's actually no way, there's no recourse. I can't do anything to get this video to be looked at by Google or by YouTube or whatever. So, you know, it sucks. I have to, you know, it's on my to-do list to kind of like go over it really carefully. Like, I'm wondering, was there, you know, maybe one of the OC remix songs that was playing had some swearing in it. I don't know. Yeah, it's really bizarre. And in fact, because of this, I'm not going to be playing any more music on the stream, at least not for you guys to hear, which kind of sucks because I kind of like that, but, you know, I'd rather not have my videos pulled down for no reason. And yeah, so I'm going to try to figure it out. Maybe if I could find the part of the video that's offensive or whatever, or inappropriate, I can just kind of cut it out and then try to re-upload it again, and maybe that'll work. So, but yeah, so anyway, so August 10th, that was the last time. So yeah, it's been a really long time, right? Yeah, so I guess that's over 6 months. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, so that's the story about you know, getting into Git extensions. This took a lot of my time. Yeah, so Moose Boy, there are several playlists in Spotify and YouTube, for example, copyright-free music. If you want some music on stream, yeah, that's true. That is a good point. You know, the thing is that OC Remix is, you know, I looked into their copyrights and all that, and so some of the material they play is copyrighted, but you're allowed to play it, you know. And what ends up happening is when it gets flagged by YouTube is just that if you watch the video, you may have to watch an ad, which will pay, you know, when some of that money goes to the authors of the music, which is totally fine. I have no problem with that. I kind of made sure all that was okay. What I didn't expect was that some of this music would, and maybe I'm wrong, right? Like, maybe I said something during my stream, or maybe there was some inappropriate content on screen. I have no idea. And unfortunately, you know, YouTube doesn't tell me what's wrong. They just say that somewhere in your 2.5 or 3 hour videos, something's bad. And there's nothing you can do about it. So that kind of sucks. So yeah, so anyway, like I said, you know, this is interesting. Yeah, YouTube being helpful, exactly. So this is interesting, and, you know, like, I think there are some of you out there, or some maybe other people who'd like to see some C# dev. So I'm thinking maybe I'll do something like, you know, once a week work on Vectrexy, once a week work on this, or maybe I'll, you know, maybe less regularly and kind of just say like, oh, tonight I feel like working on this, and I'll, whatever, we'll see how it goes. All right, Moosey boy, well, thanks for checking in. So yeah, I'm gonna close this. But tonight is about Vectrexy, so to be honest, I don't really know how far I'm gonna get into it, because since I just got back, to streaming. And to be honest, I'm also a little tired, so I just kind of wanted to just get back and explain what's been going on, and just refamiliarize myself with the situation. So actually, a couple of nights ago, knowing that I was going to stream, I decided to take a look at Vectrexy. And it's kind of interesting when you haven't looked at code that you've written for a really long period of time, how you come back with a different perspective. So back when I was working on it and streaming so often, my nose was deep in the code, and I was always focusing on the next thing to fix and all that. But coming back to it, there's a little bit of unfamiliarity, and I was trying to remember what I was working on and rereading my last commits. I remembered that the last few streams we spent on trying to fix Bedlam, as I said here. Yeah, so I was working on fixing Bedlam. There was a lockup bug that would occur when starting a second new game. And then I actually had spent many streams trying to figure this out. Yeah, so Pyro, you're asking, am I going to change my streaming schedule? So that's a great question. Most likely. In fact, I don't think, what did I write on my page? I don't think I'm supposed to be streaming normally on a Wednesday, right? I think it was Tuesday, Thursdays when I was last doing this. So I'm not sure what my new streaming schedule will be exactly. It might be Monday, Wednesdays or something like that. I'm gonna try to figure that out. Yeah, it used to be Tuesday, Thursday. So I'm gonna try to figure it out. I know there's I also got to look into there's been a lot of changes on Twitch. I know Pyro, I think you wrote to me about a what do you call it, a widget or something you can add that shows your streaming schedule. So I'm gonna look into that. Just slowly get things back up and running again. But yeah, like I was saying for Bedlam, so we had this lockup bug, and we ended up figuring it out. And I was looking at my changes, and I was like, oh yeah, this change I had made, to be honest, I don't really love it, but it's required. And basically it's a change that I made that whenever there's a read, or I think it's whenever there's a write, I don't even remember. I think it's when there's a write. Let me see. Or yeah, that's it. Whenever we execute any instruction in the CPU that adds some cycles, we add those to the memory bus, and that immediately will update certain devices that need to be more cycle accurate, if you will. And in my case, there's only one such device, which is the VIA. And so then I did all this code here. It's fine. Most of it is okay. There's a couple of optimizations I need to make. I remember now that I should just watch my old streams. But basically, I remember that one of the things that I don't like, and I didn't like doing it at the time, but it was the quickest path to success, was this weird function I had to write. So I used to be able to just kind of update the VIA, and I like that, the idea of I update the VIA and I pass it the number of cycles to run, and for the current update, what are the current inputs, and here's the output render context and the audio context that it's going to populate. But because of the fact that now updating the CPU will also update the VIA through this kind of sync interface, I had to do this thing where I call set sync context every frame, and I kind of cache the sync context, and then I use that in the sync function. And this is something that, yeah, I don't really like it. But it was the quickest way to get there. So you can see here, in the debugger, let's pull this up here. So what it used to look like, which was really nice, was execute the CPU and then update the VIA with the number of cycles that we've effectively executed, and that was that, right? And I'd pass in the input and render context and audio context. And now what I do is every frame, or every instruction, tell the VIA, by the way, here's your input, render context, and audio context for now. And so that when we execute the instructions here, when the VIA needs to sync, it's going to be able to use these values. So really not a fan of this kind of thing, and I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do to fix it, but it's something I want to fix. So anyway, what I wanted to say was, yeah, so coming back to the code. Oh, and by the way, tell me if this is legible to you guys, because I know I used to have it 120%, which I find remarkably large, and because for like the last 6 months, whenever I've been programming, I've had it at 100%. I'm finding 120 like kind of giant here. It's a little enormous for me, so I'm trying 110. So let me know if 110 is legible. If not, I'll go to 120 and get used to it again. So yeah, so what I was gonna say was that, you know, two things. One, I came back to the project, look at it, I ran it here. I'll give it a little run, and I thought, wow, you know, it's pretty cool, right? Like, I kind of like had forgotten how much stuff I had gotten done. You know, it's lower the volume a bit. 110% is perfect. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. You know, all this works, right? And like I was like, you know, messing around with it, and you know, you guys have seen this before, but it's just like, it's kind of funny. You get back to a project and you realize, man, I did a lot of work, you know, and I have all these like debug things. Like I was taking a look at my stuff for like tracing the channels and the values on the different noise, the sound channels here, and being able to toggle on and off these channels is pretty cool as well. All this stuff, right? So I guess all that to say is, I'm quite happy with the way it looks. I'm quite happy with, you know, the feature set, and that's cool. That's really great. Also the debugger, all that. I'm like, yeah, man, I did a lot of work on this emulator, and you know, it's practically done, right? I just, you know, have a bunch of like polishing things, and there's a couple of games that I want to make sure that they work properly. But yeah, it's looking in pretty good shape. On the other hand, there's a lot of stuff code-wise that I want to revisit, refactor, and fix up. In fact, I had been kind of taking them down here. So here's my like to-do list, and I had basically written, I'm going to zoom in a bit, some bunch of refactoring stuff that I had been accumulating over time. And you know, now that I get back to the code and I look at it, you know, I have this one flat folder with a whole bunch of files. There's no real modularity to it. There is modularity in the code itself. Like I always try to keep my dependencies in one direction as much as possible. And in my head, you know, I kind of know which things depend on what, but that's not really great. And, you know, there's no like, there's nothing helping me to enforce these dependencies. And in fact, there are a few places where I break these dependencies. I have a couple of things I don't like. I think one of them is here as an example. Yeah, so like the very first thing, get rid of iEngine.h global functions. So this is something. So is it engine.h or something? Let me remember it. Not iEngine. Okay, yeah, sorry, it's engine-client.h. Yeah, here we go. So these functions, I'm just gonna write iEngine-client. So like, for example, I have a couple of global functions here, which, you know, are not cool. I never was happy with this, like set focus main window, set focus console, reset overlay, that are just kind of called wherever. So this is the kind of example of where I sort of break the modularity, because the engine client isn't supposed to have functions like this. This is just supposed to be a bunch of interfaces, and yeah, so you know, and what I don't like here is I basically declare these functions here, and then I implement them in the specific SDL engine CPP here. So you see, like, not super clean. So that's the kind of thing that I want to clean up. So I'd like to like break this up, you know, possibly into actual modules. Probably use CMake to split them up. Yeah, so kind of go along that. Just give me a sec. Okay, you know what? Just give me a second. I'm just gonna answer some texts here, so I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so yeah, so this is an example of something I'm not too happy about. I think I move emulator core. Oh yeah, move emulator core out of Vectrexy class and into its own class. Yes, I don't know. There's a few things around this code that I don't like. Figure out a way to extract the CPU via update loop. This is definitely a big one. I need to get this out. So right now, like everything depends on the debugger. It's not terrible. Actually, like it's not a big deal, but basically when I do my frame update here, I go through the debugger's frame update. So right now I absolutely call through the debugger, and then the debugger, you know, does a whole bunch of stuff, but ultimately it calls this execute instruction. You know, the main core is this execute instruction. Let's see here. Yeah, so like this is the main loop of the emulator. So all of this, along with, you know, a lot of the code in execute instruction, I need to kind of hoist it out and separate it out from what the debugger is supposed to do. Right now there's a little bit of mixing up stuff in here, like in this execute instruction, there's stuff related to trace, which is just for the debugger. So I need to come up with a way, because ultimately what I would like to do is be able to run without a debugger, right? Because the debugger actually adds quite a bit of overhead. When I run in a debug build, I can barely run the emulator. It's like super slow. And a large part of that is because of the debugger. The debugger is just doing a lot of work. And when it's not optimized, it really shows. So I'd like to get that out of the way. And also because one of the ideas is, you know, this Vectrex emulator, it's pretty good, I think, you know, works pretty well. And I'd like to look into perhaps introducing it into some of those generic kind of multi-emulator projects that exist out there. So, you know, just would be interesting. And to do that, I would want to get the core of this, you know, out, and the debugger would have to be separate so that it wouldn't be in there. So yeah, so stuff like that. So yeah, as you can see, there's a ton of cleanup that I want to do. And yeah, so that's it. Like I guess I'd kind of have to get started on that. I don't know if I feel like doing it right now. Do you guys have any ideas or questions or anything like that? Any thoughts? What do I have here? All right. Because a lot of this is kind of mechanical, or I just need to kind of sit and think about how I have a lot of, like, this is what I would like to do, but I don't have exactly how I'm going to do it. Like, I have no idea really what I'm going to do right now for these global functions that I'm calling. I know some of these are pretty simple. GL render I have here, make into a class. I'm not super happy with the way I did GL render. it's a namespace with a bunch of functions, but basically what that turns into is a CPP file that's just got a whole bunch of global variables. Not super awesome. So I'd like to make this into a class, and it would just help clean things up. But like it's nothing major, you know, it's just kind of, I think for readability, understandability, it would make a lot of things more clear. Yeah, like all of this here. So actually these up here are constants, which are, yeah, sort of constants. I call them tweakables because these are the values that I modify mainly, let me see here, yeah, through ImGUI. So that's what these are. And then I have, and that's okay, these I don't mind leaving up here, but it's this kind of stuff here. Like all of these would effectively be data members if this were a class, but right now they're just a bunch of globals in an anonymous namespace. So, you know, I'd probably go with the same direction I've gone for a lot of my code, like the CPU, you know, clean header file, but using you know, Pimple to hide the implementation, but it's still a class, right? CPU impl here is a class, it's got members. Pyro, might be difficult to get back to debugging Bedlam right now, I guess, after you break, so maybe cleanup is fine for starting. So actually, Bedlam is working, right? Right, so exactly, RetroArch is definitely one of those kinds of projects that I'd be looking into. I think that's the one that, is it RetroArch that Ferris has been integrating his Virtual Boy emulator into? I forget now. But anyway, it's one of those. And there's that one that is used for, yeah, Ferris is doing that. And it's not RetroArch, right? That's used for the Raspberry Pi. Like there's another multi-emulator suite that's very popular for the Raspberry Pi. Unless it is RetroArch. RetroPie, okay. Is that the same thing? Is it just like RetroArch but like forked for the Pi? I don't know. Anyways, I at some point I'd like to look at that. Okay, yeah, okay. So that's good. So yeah, so I guess the answer then is yes. I would like to look into doing that. There is already a Vectrex emulator in there, and it works and it's pretty good. But you know, I think having multiple options can be a good thing. I'd have to really look at the one in RetroArch and see how that Vectrex emulator works. How does it do its rendering, and is it a good experience? Does it have great support for games? How does it handle overlays? You know, maybe it's better than mine, and it won't be worth trying to get mine in there. So we'll see. But if I think that mine has features that are better and it would be worth it, that would be interesting, right? RetroPie uses Emulation Station as a front end on top of RetroArch. There you go. So it is RetroArch. That's cool. Oh yeah, Emulation Station. That's it. That's what I thought. I guess I'm getting confused though. I thought Emulation Station was the kind of the equivalent of RetroArch, but it's just a front end. Okay. Now that makes sense. So yeah. I suppose I could try to just bang this one out, see how this goes. This should be fairly easy and pretty mechanical work. You know, I'm looking at this code here. This kind of thing where, you know, in C++, I wanted to have the content of this shader here be part of, you know, be embedded in the code. And so I did this thing where I declare a character array, and then I do this include, and then in there I used, you know, C++11's raw strings to create a string out of all these lines here. So that's not too bad, you know. But there is actually some efforts being made to try to improve this for C++20. It's not yet decided whether it's going to make it, but it's I think they call it stood embed. Let me see if I can find something about it. Yeah, I think it's this one here, PR 1040. So it's a proposal. You can see it's a pretty recent proposal, and the idea would be exactly like what we want to do. It's a way to embed stuff from the outside into your code, right? So this says right here, at some point, every C and C++ programmer at some point attempts to include large chunks of non-C++ code into their code. Of course, include expects the format of the data to be source code, and thusly the program fails with spectacular Lexer errors. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's been done. So basically, what they're saying here is, I think we can try to find some. Yeah, there's like the embedding of data using the linker, which kind of sucks. Yeah, something like this, you see? So stood embed my file text, binary only. Anyway, basically it's some feature that would help to get rid of these kinds of shenanigans that we do right now. Yeah, you could embed images, you could embed anything really. Basically you end up with like a binary like byte buffer of whatever you've embedded, right? And it'll be, you know, the compiler will be aware of it. In fact, apparently you could even, like, it's all const expr, so you could even do compile time stuff with the data that's been embedded. So that means that the compiler will bring in that data as a byte buffer, and then you could even write like const expr code at compile time to manipulate it if you want. And it's pretty interesting stuff. So it hasn't been accepted yet. I think there's still some issues with it. But yeah, I think a lot of people would like to see this. I know I would like to see something like this in the language. It would be really cool. So we'll see if that makes it. But for now, that'll have to stay in here. So a lot of this won't change because I have these classes that I use that are shader passes. Those will remain as they are. Yeah, it would really be. It's basically everything that's in here under this namespace. This would become like a GL render impl class. I'd be moving a lot of these into it as data members. Yeah, it's actually really not much. So yeah, another thing that will happen when I break apart these files is, like, one of the downsides to what I've done. So like literally this is like a physical problem, right? It's like if I just, you know, open the source folder, like this is all the source files, right, in one place. Big advantage of this is that's super easy for me. Like I just create a CPP file and a header file, and it just builds, and I can include really easily. That's the upside, right? The downside, of course, is that you have no idea what depends on what. Anything could include anything. That's a major downside. And also, because of the fact that I have just so many files, and, you know, I mean, it depends if you think that's a lot of files, but I kind of resist the urge to like split things out into more files, basically. So I end up with a lot of these large anonymous namespaces. Like this one here, you know, I just have a bunch of stuff in here that I normally would just put into some kind of utility, you know, a utility header file and CPP file or something. A good example is the debugger. The debugger is like this one massive, you know, it's like 1,200 lines. Most of the code is in this anonymous, I can't even speak, this anonymous namespace here, of like 600 something lines. So this is the kind of thing that I'd like to split out, you know, into like some of the debugger utilities, but I don't want to do this now because it just adds to the number of files and number of possible things to include. But if I had these into their own modules, I could have that whole concept of like, here's some public headers and stuff, and then some private stuff that is only seen by this module, and I think that would make it a lot nicer. To be fair, like C++ is just not a great language for manipulating these kinds of things. A lot of other more modern languages handle these so much better, like with internal, like in C#, modules are assemblies and all that. We don't have really modules yet in C++, and the way you do it, everyone kind of does it differently. So that's sort of partly why I haven't gone that route. But there is CMake, and CMake does have has the concept of public and private dependencies and stuff. So yeah, I have less and less excuses. I just kind of do it. So yeah, why don't we, just for tonight, keep it simple. I'll work on making this a class, and after that we'll call it a night. So I'll start doing that. All right, so this will be class glrender. And let's see here. Yeah, that's fine. And what we'll do, so make this public. So I'll do the thing I've been doing everywhere else. I'll be using my pimple utility. And we'll see about the size. So normally what I do is I create a class called CPU impl, and let me see here. Oh yeah, I do need to do the constructor destructor dance. So these are required for my pimple class to work. Very similarly to how if you try to use unique pointer to for your pimple pointer, you have to do the exact same thing. It has to do with the fact that the template knows about the type that we're trying to hide, and therefore it needs to see the constructor destructor of the auto-generated ones, and then so you have to basically declare them yourself and hide them in the same place where the type is defined, so that you don't get any compile errors. Yeah, what's the deal here? I think it's just because I still have this namespace here. So okay, let's keep going. Right, I'm going to need member functions for all of those functions there. Comment this out for now. Okay, let's do this way. I'll bring these down, and then I'll just have it create definitions for all of these. Yeah, that's good. So I'm just letting the Visual Studio create definitions for these functions for me. And then all of these will pretty much just return whatever the impl. Again, do I dot and access? No, it is a pointer type. As is typical, we forward everything. we'll let Clang format reformat all of this afterwards. Okay, so if I save, there we go, reformatted. Right now we're getting errors because I haven't actually defined the class that we're going to be implementing, which is all of this code here, basically. So let's see here. How do I want to do this? Okay, I'll bring this back. So this will become class glRenderImpl, like this. Oh wow, that's so not cool. Some of these comments, the reflowing through Clang format just got like totally messed up here. You just see something? Oh yeah, that sucks. Okay, so we're gonna do. I'm gonna use our source control thing to help us out here. Don't return in the last method. Thank you. Thank you, Slurpee. Yeah, so let's bring this back. I suppose that's one of the downsides to using Clang format, is that there's this thing with the reflowing of comments, and if you comment out a whole section, then you end up messing up your comments, where if there's a max column limit, which is exactly my case. So yeah, I'll just bring this back. Let's do this again. So class glRenderImpl. Okay, that's better. All right, so, oh yes, and of course these have to be public, which is why this is all red. I think that's it. No, that's not quite it, actually. So the next thing is I'm still using these globals, but this should at least build. Let's just see if this actually builds. Okay. Ah, right. Yeah, I have to repeat the now this let's repeat the interface here, so that should work. Okay, that builds. So now let's see about making these members. So rather than have a whole bunch of globals, we shall move all of these into our class as private data members. I think when I did this here, I did this a little bit differently. Yeah, I don't know why I did this for the CPU, where I made my data members, like I placed them at the top and I made them public. It's a little bit odd. I guess because it's an impl, it doesn't matter as much, but it's not normally the way I would do things. So let's do it the way I normally would do it. So these would now be, should I use the rename feature? Seems to work. The rename feature works super well in languages like C# and C++. It depends. In a simple case like this, where everything is in one file, it should work fine. Okay, so let's see if this still builds. Okay, looking good. So now, the other thing is, do I want to... Yeah, no, that's fine. So I have this anonymous namespace, I have this anonymous namespace. Why is this out here? I don't know. Okay, so I will leave these here for now, like I said. So these are just basically all just utility stuff. So I'm going to leave all of this in here. Like I said, this will eventually move out. Maybe. Create line and point vertex arrays. Draw full screen quad. Okay, so what about these globals? Why are these all here? These here could be moved in as well, right? I think I can move all of these as members as well into my class. Let's just take a look. I don't really need that. Okay, so let's just see if this builds without having to rename anything. Okay. Ah, right. Okay, so I have some dependencies on these globals in my shader passes. This is not awesome. We could fix that. We should fix that. Screen viewport. Yeah, let's do this right. It's not much. Some of these passes want, like, I think all of them need the texture FB, so I could make it that shader passes constructor takes it. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I guess that would make some sense. Frame buffer resource. And then what do I do with this guy? I create it here in my initialize. Create it, I bind, I clear through it. Okay, okay. So yeah, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna modify shader passes constructor to take this type here, frame buffer resource, by non-const ref, because we're gonna wanna keep a reference to it. So we'll call this texture FB. When I wheel scroll, it sounds like a frog croaking. Okay. I could turn off the, there you go, look, silent. But I don't like the feel of that, so you're gonna have to get used to frog croaking. So we do this. Ah, okay. Yeah, sorry, this is a reference. I can't copy it. That's on purpose. It's a move only type. So that's good. So we do this. So this is protected, so we can access it in the shader passes. This also means now that all my passes will now need to accept this in their constructor, and that's perfectly fine. We'll just do that. Shader pass extra FB. Right. And that's it. So those are all the shader passes. Now they have this. We're gonna need to add a couple more data members in there. And we'll change these here to mTextureFB. So no more red squiggly for this guy. And then we need to add for each one the special extra params that we want it to take. So like here, draw vector pass will take the projection matrix and the model view matrix. Okay, so this class is good. Just a few more like that. So it looks like darken texture pass is fine. Glow pass looks fine. Combine vectors and glow is fine. Yeah, that's true, but not in my case. It's all hidden away. Don't need to make these public. But if I wanted to, I could, right? The thing is, these here are like the public class is the GL render impl, and these are classes for each pass, and I have instances of those in the GL render impl. So I'm just basically sharing the type that is owned by the render impl into these guys. They just reference the same one instance of those variables. But if I wanted to expose it, I would probably expose it here. Okay, so this guy would need the screen viewport. Well, you know, here, so the question is, why not pass GLRender object to the shaders? Because, you know, that's the thing I want to avoid, right? The kind of like the interdependencies, right? I like to keep my dependencies in one direction. I feel like when you do that, your code is a lot cleaner, it's easier to reuse. In this case, these are just small classes that are, you know, it's true, it's all internal stuff, but if I make them aware of the GLRender impl, so for one thing, you know, right now, the render impl class is declared underneath it. It's an implementation of the pimple. I would need to do this thing where I'd have to declare the class at the top, but not implement any functions, then put these classes so that they're aware of it underneath it, then implement it underneath. Like, it just becomes like a pain, you know, even just physically. But more importantly, I don't want those classes to see the types on GLRender impl. Like these functions like initialize, shutdown, reset overlay, these shader passes should know nothing about that, right? They just need to work on specific subsets of data. So I create them and I pass them exactly the data they need to see, which makes them actually much more reusable. You know what I mean? Okay, so this guy just needs one member here, which is the viewport. Okay, so this should compile. I just need to rename a couple of members from G underscore. Oh, did I miss one? I must have missed one. Oh yeah, no, I didn't miss it. I just renamed this guy. Okay, I called it viewport. Was it not called viewport before? Did I do the wrong thing, or did I just not call it screen viewport? I think that's what it is. Oh yeah, sorry, it should be called screen viewport. Just keeping with the nomenclature that I had going. And what's this here? The usage of GLRender impl GL overlay texture requires the compiler to capture this, but the current default capture mode does not allow it. Why does it need to capture this? What's it doing? This here, create overlay texture. Oh, because this is now a member, no longer a global. Okay. Okay, what am I doing here? Create empty overlay. I could just capture it. I know it's fine. I just want to see. If we fail, then allocate a min size transparent texture. Okay. All right, that's fine. Is it not that? is not a variable. I don't understand this error. It's not a variable. It is a variable. Trying to capture it by reference. Maybe the compiler will give me more details. So reset overlay is part of glrender impl, and so is this. It's a member of glrender impl. I guess because when it comes to data members, can't you just capture specific data members? Is there not a way? Yeah, I can do this, but I was just curious if I could is it possible to just capture a specific member? You know what I mean? You capture class members by saying this in the capture. This has nothing to do with the fact that the member is const. Yeah, sure. Only objects with automatic storage duration can be captured by a lambda in C++11. If you want the effect of capturing a non-static class data member, you can either capture the this pointer or cache the data member's value in a local variable and capture that. Okay, interesting. Which will be much more concise, yeah. So it's possible to do it in C++14 using this syntax here. All right, well. This it is. Basically, if I wanted to do it, I could do it. I'd have to do something like, you know, actually I could probably just do like this, and I'd have to specify like that. No? Right, and I'd want this to be, can I do this? Yeah, it's like this would work. Say I'm capturing, like what this syntax from C++14 is basically naming a data member of the lambda struct that it's going to generate, and I'm saying that it's going to be a reference to this variable here. But honestly, it's so small and not worth the effort here, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, and now I get my pimple size must be at least size, because I don't have the right size and I have no idea what it's going to be. It's a little bit ridiculous because I don't actually print the size. I think I have a way to show the size. I need to actually see. Can I? Why wasn't it again that I couldn't print the size? Oh, and there's more here. No. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, yes, I need to actually initialize my passes in my own constructor, of course. So let's do that. Let's do that correctly. So we make a constructor and we start initializing our passes. So all of them need to be initialized with what is currently called texture FB. So that's going to be true for all of them. This guy also wants the projection matrix. And I'm going to rename all of these soon enough. I just want this to compile first. Get rid of that G. Model view matrix, and that's that for that guy. Darken texture pass also gets this, and I think that's all it wants. Yeah. Glow pass gets the same. Combine vector and glow. This one has a couple more, if I'm not mistaken. It has the screen viewport. All right. Yeah, I don't think I have a way to know what the size is. If it's too small, I think I just say, hey, this is too small, but I don't say what the size currently is, right? In my output. I need to improve this. I think there's even a proposal to make it so that these static asserts can like take some kind of format string or something, you know, because that's really what I would need. I'd like to print the value of size here, you know, and I can't do it. And then, you know, there are these kind of tricks you can do to figure out what the exact size is. Like I could do it right now, something like, you know, we create a template. We say like size of type or whatever, type size, and then we don't define it. So yeah, so Slurpee, you're asking me, why do I need to pass a size? So I will answer that question because it's an interesting question and there's an interesting answer behind it. Let me just do this thing to figure out the size and see if this actually works first. Okay, so you see, this is what I mean by tricks, right? So the trick here, so it's in my error, it's saying gblah uses undefined struct type size 496, okay? And the reason why it's doing this is because I defined a template that takes a int non-type param here, and it's called type size, but it has no body, right? There's no definition for it. And then I try to instantiate a global of type size, and in there I want to see the size of GL render impl, right? Like this could be called like print size or print int or whatever you want to call it, right? Anyway, so what happens is that the compiler says, okay, I want to create this for you, but I don't know what the type is because it's undefined, But in doing that, it actually prints the instance of the template that it's generating, and then that, in this case, it's type size of 496. So now I know that, you know, 512 is a good size for this, right? It's a tight enough size that's a power of 2. Now, to answer your question, why am I doing this? So this is an interesting idea. There's, you know, obviously there's like a video of me working on this. Typically, the way you do Pimple is to use something like unique pointer. But the thing when you do that is that there's a heap allocation that has to be made. Bruce Bob, can you make it Const Expert and have IntelliSense show you? Yeah, I'm thinking about what you're saying. I mean, even this, I think. See, even here, IntelliSense is showing me exactly as you said. Even without compiling, I just hover over it and it says type size 496, right? So that's cool. But you know what? Ideally, what I would really like is I would like for this size to come out somehow from here. But static assert doesn't really, you know, it would be cool, right? If it just like says, hey, you know, I'm failing the static assert. This is what I am evaluating. And since here, you know, it could show me, right? It could actually say size, the value of size greater than or equal to the value of size of t, but it doesn't actually do that. But there's probably a way. The thing is, I would have to do it without using static assert. I'd have to use, like, write my own static assert, like again, like a template meta function or something that does the thing of trying to instantiate a type, and if the size is okay, the type is defined, and if it's not, it won't be defined, and so I'd get a compile time error that in the error message would show me the size, and that would be better than this. But this is so much more succinct. It's cleaner. It's using static assert. So yeah. And every time I want to do something about it, I think, well, I'm using this like 4 times in my code, and once I've got a size going, I don't really care anymore. So it's one of those I kind of deal with it once in a blue moon, and then I just forget about it. So, but yeah. So to answer the question of what is this all about? So normally when you use unique pointer, so unique pointer is really common for this type of technique, right? If you look up like C++ Pimple unique pointer. You know, on Fluent CPP here, which is a really great blog, he shows you like the standard way of doing it, right? So like this is the old way of doing it without unique pointer, where you do new and delete, and then with unique pointer you do this kind of thing, right? And you have a unique pointer to your type. So here you don't have to specify any sizes or anything, right? Everything works as you would imagine. In the CPP file, you'll end up doing impl the new here, and then this guy will delete it automatically because it's a unique pointer. So that's really cool. There's some issues, of course, and this the same thing that I have to deal with destructor visibility. He shows that both the constructor and destructor will have to be implemented in the CPP file, so that's what he's showing over there. Same thing with me. That has to do with details I'm not going to get into, but details around the fact that the whole idea of Pimple is to hide the class, and the class is implemented in a CPP file, and therefore, you know, we don't want the unique pointer in this case to invoke a destructor on a type that's not defined. And the only way you can do that is to define the destructor, but in the CPP file and not in the header file. So, all right, so that's fine. But what's the problem with unique pointer? The problem is that there is a heap allocation that is made, and all access goes to this one extra layer of indirection, which isn't super cache friendly, which makes Pimple a little bit more expensive than it needs to be, right? So basically what I'm saying is you have this type that, you know, wraps a unique pointer. So this here has memory, right? It'll be allocated maybe on the stack or on the heap. And then this thing makes another heap allocation, which is the actual impl class. And then every time you make a member function call on the first one, it needs to go through this pointer to another piece of code that works on another piece of data that's been allocated somewhere else on the heap. So that's, you know, it's kind of like virtual functions. You get this double indirection. you know, the first access to your pimple class on the outside, like your non-pimpled, I guess, whatever you want to call it, the outer class will, you know, fetch in the pimple pointer into cache, and then you call, and then it'll have to go and bring in into cache the actual data for the, and I don't think I'm explaining this very well. Like, let's say this class GLRender was using unique pointer here instead, right? Every time you call one of these functions, you'd basically, the CPU would have to fetch in and cache the area of memory that holds the pointer itself. And then when you call the function, this guy just forwards it to a function and passes with it the actual data that the unique pointer points to, so they can work on it, right? As soon as you start accessing the data members of the impl type, then that is somewhere else on the heap. It's not nearby, right? So you'll get another cache miss, and it'll bring that in, and you'll start using it. This happens over and over. So there's this inherent cost to using the pimple idiom. It's not free. You know, we do it so that you get a nice clean header, that you don't bring in dependencies. You're totally hiding everything. But if you're, you know, in like high performance environments where you don't want to have to pay the cost, this kind of sucks. So what I did is I wrote a class called Pimple that the way it works is you specify the unknown type, but you also specify a size. And all I'm doing is I'm taking advantage of this std aligned storage here to make an aligned buffer of that size, and I call it storage. And then I do in place new, you know, like when you do have here a construct call, and I do like basically in place new into the storage type. I you know, support copy and move, and I do destruction explicitly into the buffer. So it's basically I have like a byte buffer, and I placement new and delete and all that stuff the type that you've provided. So it's as simple as that, right? And so what that does is it makes it so that this GLRender class, when you make an access to it, it just has to load everything into cache one. So it's as if all the data members were right there. Oh, thanks, Slurpee. I thought it was pretty cool. You know, it's a trade-off, right? My pleasure. I don't mind explaining it. I actually have like this header file, and I tried to explain everything as well in here. And actually at work on my current project, there's somebody on my team that was lamenting exactly this problem with the unique pointer for pimple thing, and I told him how I implemented this, and he wants to actually bring this into our project. So it does have, you know, usability. It can be used in a lot of situations. So yeah, so that's what this is. Okay, so I think we compile, right? That's what we've gone to. So I think we can start renaming those G underscores. Yeah, we compile. We're not quite done even after that, because this class is used outside and was being used as a namespace with functions, and I'm gonna have to fix that as well. All right, so let's do some rename. Let's use this guy. So I'm just doing Control-RR to rename, replacing the G with an M. I could also just do a search and replace, but this seems to be working, so. And why not use the IDE when you can, right? Okay, so, and this is part of the reason why you want to use it, because sometimes it shows you things that maybe you don't want to do. So what is it saying here? Rename G vector texture to M vector. So what's the problem here? Is there a problem? Okay, so these are all the good ones. Okay, it's because it's in comments here. Yeah. Okay, that's what it does is it says, if I see it in comments, you know, I want to bring it to your attention. Do you want me to rename it in the comments? And that looks fine. So I'll just apply it. Okay, so see, this is interesting. So here it's saying, I see this type and it's been stringized here. Do you want me to rename this one? And this one is actually not checked, but I do want it to be renamed. And you see what's fun is when you click it, it actually shows you what the code would look like with it renamed. So that's pretty nice. This is a really nice feature of VS 2017. Interesting. This time it actually remembered that the last time I did this. So it says, oh, you want to do that, so I'll do it again. That's cool. And there's these guys up here. Yeah, there is. Well, I mean, you can make a macro, and then you know the macro can basically use the pound. It's either pound or pound. I think it's pound. The macros variable, and then that'll stringize it. But I mean, I don't think it's really worth doing here. If I find myself doing it a lot, I'll probably make a macro to do it. So no more G underscores in this file. So is this build? It builds. Okay, so now this CPP file builds, but we're going to have a reference to GL render in the SDL engine here. Yeah. So let's look at what I'm going to need to do here. I'm going to probably need to have a, in this case, my SDL engine is also in that same kind of like, you know, I have a class, but I think I have a lot of globals in here. So this too needs the same kind of treatment. But for now, we're going to make a global variable of the GL render as we have here for everything else. Put it here. Something like that. And then we'll do like this. So this will be replaced by this, right? Yeah. Set overlay, initialize. Okay. Yeah, no singletons. Okay, so this means actually that everything should build. So let's see if that's the case. Great, so let's see if it runs. Looking good. So GL render is here. So yeah, this is still working. All these fun values to play with. That's without the blur, without the overlay. Okay. So let's get this committed. Just going to do one final look through that file, see if I missed anything. I was just thinking about how I should probably, you know, these shader source buffers here should probably be also passed in. I'm going to leave it like this for now, though, but yeah, it's something to consider. But it's not really a big deal. Things are pretty straightforward right now. But yeah, I like this. This is good. It's nice and clean. You see that the usage of globals led to me accessing globals in the shader passes, and this kind of going to classes and, you know, making private data members stuff forced me to then initialize these guys correctly and, you know, keep me honest, so to speak, which is what's good about not using global variables, right? Okay, yeah, so this is pretty good. So let's get that in. So make gel render a class. Let's push that, and let me update my to-do list. Oops. Cool. So we did one thing on the list tonight, which is pretty good. So I'm just gonna mess around a little bit with the emulator, try some games again, just to kind of see again where we're at. I have pause this for a sec. I have my list somewhere of well, then again, I have this list of like remember my list of games and what's supported so far. I'm gonna keep that. Oh, that's Dropbox, that's why. Give me a second. Oh yeah, that's it. This file here. Yes, thanks, Pyro. Exactly, the game's compatibility list. Like, I don't even really remember where I was at. I think what I concluded, yeah, all the commercially released ROMs, the base version, not the alternates, seem to work as expected. I think Bedlam here, now did I ever fix that? Let's see, Bedlam. Yeah, then there's a whole bunch of these alternate versions that I get, like invalid reads and stuff like that. That's the kind of thing I need to take a look at. Like, I don't even know if these alternate ROMs, what they are and what they're supposed to be, and whether or not they're supposed to be supported. You know, do they work on hardware? So that's one of those things I need to go over. But at least all the base versions definitely run without much issues. Do I have the preview thing? Open preview. Just to get the lines in there. See, that's Berserk. Oh yeah, so I have one here where I wrote good, font render not perfect, bars crooked at the bottom for Star Trek. Yeah, I guess I could try the second Bedlam one. Let me just look at this one because it's the only one that I have that's not set to great. But I didn't, I decided it wasn't in a great version. So let's see here, Star Trek. So it's this here. But you know, I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually what it looks like. I don't. There's like a part of me that remembers this game having like a kind of a crooked, but maybe not this crooked. Let me take a look. And just mute it. Hey, ads. Okay, so let's see if we can just find. Yeah, you can see there's a bit of a, and this, unfortunately, this camera angle does not help to see it. So let's see. Oh, maybe here. Oh yeah, look at that. That's pretty crooked, right? Yeah, I think I remember that. So it's not, it doesn't look actually too far. So maybe we can just say this is fine. I'd say this looks about right. It's hard to see because it would be nice to compare it to the overlay, but it's really difficult to see. But like, for example, we can see that in terms of alignment with the number, this here is sort of aligned with the a little bit above the bottom of the 3, which is the same for me. And this one looks like it's practically aligned with the bottom of this right A here, or whatever that is. Or no, I guess this is the Starship logo or whatever. Needs more glow. Yeah. So we can play with the glow, you know. But yeah, the way it looks on the real thing sometimes depends also on the way it was filmed and stuff like that. But yeah, we could definitely up the glow. You know, that one thing I want to do is I right now it's not super fun to tweak things like the glow, and I'd like to like make it more user friendly. You know, it's like to provide like a simple slider that when you slide, maybe it changes a few different parameters, and you kind of get this linear or some kind of interpolation between a few different variables that gives you the how much more glow you really want. So for the glow, it's something like, it's a series of things, you know. There's the line with glow, which is probably the one that has the most effect, you know, like this one here. Yeah, maybe profiles, like Bruce Bob was saying. So here this looks a lot more like, say, the one over here, you know. closer. So something like that, you know? There's a few other ones we'd have to tweak. The glow radius is another one that we can play with. You can see what it is. It's basically a Gaussian blur. So this is the radius of the blur. If you go too far out, it looks really terrible. So there's like kind of like a sweet spot in there somewhere. If we really want to compare, I guess I could remove, because he barely has the overlay on there. So it's something more like this. But yeah, you know, I'd say that it's pretty close, right? In terms of how it's looking down here. So let's say that we are great for that guy. And I wrote font render not perfect, but I think the font render is fine. These are things that may have been fixed by many other changes that I've made. Was I gonna add a way to mark down? Something to like reformat my tables. No, not table of contents. It's been too long. How do I see my extensions? Enabled. Oh, these ones. Alt-Shift-F, table formatter. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. If you're wondering, it's just like I deleted this, and instead of having to insert spaces to like bring this there, I could just say Alt-Shift-F, and it. What's really cool is that if you make this wider, like over here, then you do Alt-Shift-F, it'll make the whole thing, fit basically. So it's really nice. Really nice plugin. Can highly recommend it. Okay. Yeah, and maybe before I retire, we can take a look at Bedlam. You were saying Bedlam B1. We'll take a look at this. I have an invalid read here. What is this awful sound? Is that... That's how it's supposed to sound. Let me restart that. Oh, Pyro, you're trying it out? Yeah, so Bedlam B1 seems to have some weird audio issues. Let's try and remove channel A. Oh, and then we get some kind of assertion. What do we have here? Forget what I do here. Assert handler. What did I do in my assert handler? Why isn't it opening it? Hello? Okay. This would mean I'm throwing outside of the debugger, which is why it's not being caught. Yeah, let me try and repro it. I kind of skipped it too quickly. While I'm at it. So it's a channel C. Okay, so we got here. So it's during so it's from my debugger. Okay, assert elapsed cycles greater than 0. So I've gotten infinite loop otherwise. So I've gotten an instruction that returned 0. So that's weird. That's weird. This should not happen, but I don't know why that happened. Because normally, if it's 0, we do this. So how could it return 0? Unless it's returning a negative number. Let's see. This here. I'm just trying to see if I can see the value of elapsed cycles here, but I don't see the where the compare is. Here. This is a valid command. No, it's not in the locals because I'm in release, you know, so unfortunately most things are optimized away. So I was trying to see if I could find, like, you know, elapsed here. Variable is optimized away and not available. So I was trying to see which register it might still be in. Probably it's gone now. So here it called the assert handler, but before it did that, it would have had to have compared. Yeah. Usually you can like kind of put it together, but for some, I'm a bit confused here by this code. Like, why would this if valid command if token size, which is, that's a bit strange because that's the kind of code I do have that code in a lot of places. So this may, well, not really a lot of places. I have here. I don't really understand how the, you know, how this code got laid out by the optimizer, by the linker. This one especially being so close to this piece of code for the assertion. I can't find the jump. Oh. So now you just got to kind of scroll through the disassembly and look for a jump to this address, but hold on a second. I'll be right back. Sorry. Anyways, okay, whatever. So something goes wrong. So we can see that I still have some issues to work on for the non-hacked, I guess, or whatever versions. But yeah. So still more work to do. You know, this actually also highlights another issue I have, which is I would love to just use debug most of the time, you know, but thing is, it's too slow. Like right now, you know, let's give it a whirl, right? We'll try a debug build and we'll see what the actual error looks like, but you're gonna see that it's painful and it's really due to performance. And I'd have to, oh, this is interesting, actually. This is interesting. In debug, I don't have enough bytes for my for this here, and why is that? I wonder what it is that takes more room here. Probably like vector and stuff like that. I don't know. There's something that's probably going to take a bit more space. Interesting. Anyway, let's make this whatever. Who cares? 1024. I was so close to the 512 limit that it's not too surprising. You know, any kind of padding or anything like that. Probably in debug, it's putting some extra padding, maybe for checks. You know, this for like memory overwrite checks that it does at runtime. So like here you can see like my frame rate is what, two frames per second. Whereas then in release, we're like, you know, hundreds of frames per second. So it's just ridiculous, you know? Look at this. And when I profile it, the debug build, there's a lot of stuff that shows up, but it's mainly the fact, so there's a few things. There's the debugger, which takes, there are things that the debugger is doing that are not being inlined, and that takes up like a pretty significant portion of the frame. And also my CPU. in release, so much of the CPU code gets inlined, whereas in debug, none of it does. And that causes major slowdowns. There's also code for doing the memory access that's pretty slow. So there's a whole bunch of things that I'd have to optimize. I tried doing some optimizations. One of the things I tried to do was force inline a bunch of stuff in the CPU. And in fact, when I did that, I ended up, what was it again? Something like, I think I ended up like busting my stack. I didn't have enough stack size because of the inlining, so I'd have to like increase my stack size in debug or something. Not something I felt like doing, so I was like, I'll revisit this some point later. But see, like it's practically unusable, you know. What did I just get? Aha, so this would explain the audio. So I have assertions. That only trip in debug. And this would explain why the audio was so funky. Oh, that's interesting. Only 4 bits should be set. Clearly, we are setting more than 4 here. We have an extra bit up here. Unless my assertion is wrong. Is it 4 bits or should it be 8 bits? Because I'm shifting left by 8 here. This is probably an incorrect assertion. Yeah, this looks wrong. Yeah, this looks wrong. Let's try that. You can tell I haven't even run the release build in so long. I should have tripped this assertion probably a while ago, but it's not used to running debug anymore, so. And also I don't usually use the assert macro because of that. I have my own, but I guess here is some code where I, for whatever reason, ended up using it. So Bedlam B1. I gotta stop this noise. Okay, if we try to just let it die. Okay, so now hopefully we'll see what's going on. So it's actually 0. That's interesting. I suppose, yeah, because it's actually uint, so it couldn't have been negative. Now that I think about it, I forgot that this was an unsigned int. So yeah, I don't know, why is it 0? Strange. I don't know, and I don't really feel like debugging this right now, so I'm going to stop here But yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I don't exactly know when I'm going to stream next, but it won't be in 6 months. It'll be sometime within a week, I suppose. I'm going to figure out what my new regular schedule should be, and I'll update Twitch and I'll post on Twitter when I'll be streaming again. If not, follow me here on Twitch and you'll know when I go on. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you next time.